Turn our attention now to Norfolk Public Schools right here in Hampton Roads, our own backyard. A big discussion happening right now as school board leaders have been charged by the city to come up with a plan that will close, consolidate, and repurpose at least a dozen schools within the division. And just last night, we were expecting to get a vote on whatever plan they were going to choose, and the decision was made by school board leaders to kick that decision down the road. They tabled it. That will now take place, or at least they're going to bring that vote back up for discussion on September 29th at 5 p.m. But let's look at what the plan that was on the table, what it currently says. All right, if we can pull that up there, Naya, thank you so much. Within this plan, there would be 9 schools slated for closure. You're looking at them there: Willoughby and Berkeley Early Childhood Care Centers. You have Tarleton Elementary, Norview, PB Young, and Granby elementary schools that were a part of that as well. You also have the old Richard Bowling Center, Madison, and open campus at Easton, and then Norfolk Technical Center. All of those at some point within the next few years would close. Let's look at the schools that will be repurposed. Ocean Air Elementary, St. Helena, Lindenwood, and Chesterfield Academy are among those that will be repurposed. And then you have one school technically that's being rebuilt under this plan. It would be Jaycox Elementary, actually, would be the one that would be rebuilt. We know that Maury High School has had a lot of conversation about renovations there. And then Lake Taylor High School would be renovated, and a career technical center would be a part of adding it into that. Okay, so under this plan, real quick, just to kind of give a little bit of a timeline, the first thing would be those early childhood care centers from this new plan that was on the table, the Willoughby and Berkeley early childhood care centers. And then they would create a redistricting plan to figure out where all the students and how they would get to, X, Y, and Z locations. And the goal at that point is hopefully between 2027 and 2034, they would complete all the closures and consolidations at least 2 or more per year, pending the rebuild process for Jaycox and Lake Taylor High School's renovations. Okay, taking a breather there. Again, we were expecting to get a final vote from the school board yesterday. That did not happen. Now we're going to have to wait at least a week and a half until that takes place. But I actually spoke with Norfolk City Councilman, Superward 7 Councilman Carlos Clanton this morning, and asked him what he thought about the process, the plan, and the fact that they kicked it down the line here yesterday. And we're going to listen to his thoughts because he has a very unique perspective, not only being on the city council, which ordered for this process to start, but also his time being on the Norfolk School Board. So let's listen to his thoughts. The first question was what he thought about the decision being delayed for another meeting.
We have already given an extension. Council said we wanted this by August 1st. The school board chair sent a message over to the mayor and to council requesting the additional time to the 19th. And we are fastly approaching that. The 19th hasn't gotten here yet, but we're pretty much a day off. And so really to see that the school board did not move with action, even after they've come back and added on a 5th option that was not solidified or even, I guess you would say, in foundation of data with their consultant, and for them not to take action here, to me, and what it really sends is a message of continuing to kick and punt this down the road rather than taking a definitive action. And so it's disappointing.
There's been a lot of conversation on how we got here and what's the solution. My first thing to you is, what are your thoughts on the current proposal that are on the table? And then I'll ask you, what are your thoughts overall that the city and school leaders are even having to make these decisions in the first place?
Yeah, so it's a lot of things packaged in there, but I'll just address it in this respect that this is not new. We have known for a while that our student enrollment was declining, and then you start to look at the numbers. It's clear as day. It's not where it used to be. And so you have to make a decision at some point to say, look, do we continue to spend millions of dollars to maintain average age of buildings at over 50 plus years? I mean, you look at Norview Elementary and Jaycox. I mean, we're talking about buildings, Granby, that are 75, 80 years old. And so the average life of a school, you pretty much look at it about midlife. You do a major refresh, and then you make that decision as you get to the latter part of it, whether or not you're going to keep it or not, or get rid of it. And so really what we have at this point is a situation where we knew this was coming. One of my last meetings in June of 2024, we were presented, hey, this is what we have. This is what potential plan may be. But we stopped. We said, let's hold off. What we want to do is ensure that we have community engagement, community voice as we move through this process. And so we directed the superintendent at that time to go out, get our team, and engage the community so they could have input. And this was very critically important for me because I was on the school board when the whole recommendation came about closing Lindenwood Elementary School and moving Madison. And the major pushback and public outcry that we received regarding that proposal. It wasn't that it was a totally bad proposal. It was the fact that the community hadn't been included in the process. We didn't have the facility committee. They weren't doing that particular level of engagement. So we wanted to right that wrong and ensure that we had community voice at the table. The other side of that is that there is a lot of, as I would call it, emotional attachment to physical structures. And you have people who hadn't been, and I'll just use Lindenwood again, hadn't been in that building in 50 some odd years and were coming out crying. They hadn't supported, been there to be a reading buddy, anybody for those kids, but it was all about, I went to that school 40, 50 some odd years ago. And so we know that that's going to happen. That always happens when you talk about making change in the community. So that kind of pulls us to a point where we're in the fall. We were supposed to have a report in December before I was supposed to leave the school board. And to be quite frank and transparent, we did not receive that report. And I didn't understand why, but I later found out that at that time, the current chair of the school board had pretty much put a halt to it, hadn't informed the rest of the board. And so we were further delaying this process. And so for me, honestly, I was ready to put a resolution and say, I'm going to direct this to get this done. But again, I wanted to trust that the new board members that were coming on and to allow my former colleagues to work together to make this thing happen. And so that's where you got to the point where City Council had done the resolution. And so whether or not people were saying, well, why is council doing this? Because this was continuously being kicked down the road. And me as a former school board member speaking about it was like, yeah, we should have had this and we should have moved forward with it. As far as the different recommendations that are on the table, first and foremost, the only recommendations that I would give any type of credence to are the ones that have been submitted by the consultant, the one that we have spent money, taxpayer money on, that is founded in data, and not the fifth option, which to me is nothing more than political theater. You've got two members of the board who went in solace and isolation and then work with others to come in and say, this is what we want to do to really to placate to some special interest. To me, that's not even an option. Go back to the four that are there. This is why even when you look at Maury High School, council didn't vote on anything talking about against school or anything else because we didn't want to get ahead of the school board. Council wanted to say, allow the school board to go through its process. We'll vote on the original plan with Maury. That's what happened there. So, even this whole, someone will try to put in the community, oh, the school board and council are at odds. No, the city council doesn't have any control over the autonomy of the school board other than the fiscal component of it. And we're held responsible as the fiscal stewards to ensure that the taxpayer dollars are being spent the way that they need to be spent. And so consolidation of some of these schools, and in many cases, there'll be some rebuilds of larger schools that will have more resources. People have to, and when I go to the community, I'll say this as I kind of educate about this. Right now, you have to look at it. We have all these buildings. The number one thing in a school that ensures student success is a highly qualified teacher. That's number one thing. Everything else, environment, making sure we have resources. But the number one thing in that classroom, day in and day out, is that you have a highly qualified teacher. And right now, the challenge is that we are diluting that. we already know that there's a national shortage on qualified, certified teachers. And so, one way also looking at this facility realignment is that if we reduce the number of buildings, if we are looking at rebuilding and repurposing some other opportunities, what it allows the school division to do is to put more highly qualified, certified teachers in a single building to ensure student success. So people have to look at the bigger picture here. It's more than dollars and cents. It's about getting the main thing, making the main thing, and putting qualified teachers in the school buildings. We're not getting rid of any staff. We just need to realign and put the resources that really matter to ensure student success.
Just for people who might be confused, even on how the city council can get in on this, right? The city council ultimately is where the money will funnel through. You guys approve that. Obviously, the Norfolk Public School Board, they decide how that money will be spent. So they submit the budget. You
Yep.
guys approve the money for their budget. So that's how even the resolution you're talking about from the city, how you can even have that authority, if you want to call it the authority, for that to work, correct?
Yes, and people have to also understand like we aren't like some other school and city relationships where it's sometimes you have the school board begging for money from the city council. Several years back, Norfolk and the city of Norfolk and Norfolk Public Schools came together to come up with a funding formula that is tied to I think it's 10 cent on every dollar there um, automatically goes to the public education. So we already made a formula that said, hey, this is what you're going to get right off the bat, looking at tax revenues. And so what council has said is, look, we've given you this opportunity. We're not saying you have to come and beg for us for money. But if you aren't taking the necessary fiscal steps on your end to ensure that those tax dollars are being spent the best way that they can, that's what the resolution was saying to the school board, that if you don't send this, we got to reduce the number of schools, then we will get rid of that funding formula and move to a categorical spending, which means that the city council can determine how much money that they're going to give in each area. So that's where it really comes down to. It's like we're putting the I guess you could say the cart right there to the school board to make that decision. Hey, we're giving you the opportunity. We're not directing you, but you're going to force our hand if you don't get moving on this thing because the revenues are getting tight.
And you mentioned some of the schools there. For those who don't know, you mentioned Lindenwood Elementary. That's one of a few schools, five of them, that are going to be repurposed with Ocean Air, St. Helena, and Chesterfield Academy among those.
Chesterfield closing Granby Elementary, closing Norview Elementary, and if people remember in 2021, when I was on the school board, we approved a capital improvement plan that called for a new Maury High School, renovations to Booker T. Washington, a new J. Cox Elementary School, a new Norview Elementary School, and a new Granby Elementary. And the other thing that people have to also pay attention here is that that plan was based on thinking that we were going to receive $30 million in revenue from the casino, that the casino was going to pay for new school construction. And that's pretty much to pay on the debt that we would have to take bonds out to do. Well, those numbers have been updated. That number is not 30 million, but it's saying that it's about $15 million. And so when you look at that $50 million, that really is just covering the cost of debt for the new Maury High School. So the reality is that we've got to make some changes, and that's not just something that the city of Norfolk has done, but we look at the economy around us. We talk these tariffs, all these other things, stuff that's costing more. And the original Maury High School was only $175 million, and in 2 years, it shot up to $220 million.
Last question to you here, because I know with your time as well this morning, again, I appreciate you giving it to us. Um, you again are someone who, you went to Norfolk Public Schools. You talked about how there's a lot of sentimental value for people in the community when they are talking about losing a building that they hold dear, even if they haven't been there in a long time. What do you want your neighbors and people in the community to know about the next steps and moving forward in the city of Norfolk?
I think this is an opportunity for us to do something bold, and to do something bold, not just for those students who are in our current school division, but for the future. Ultimately, I know that when I was a kid in Lambert's Point, and Oldham University was looking at building the village. President Cook at that time and C.C. Tucker reached out to me as a prospective student at Oldham University to come and speak before City Council. because there was a lot of pushback about there were some homes and things that were on that side. And I remember coming in and giving this speech, what I call the Great Oak Tree speech, about, hey, that sometimes we got to plant something. There may be some tears, that might be representative of the water, but there are going to be some brighter days there. And ultimately, we've got to start somewhere. And I use that as an example right now, that we've got to start somewhere. And that there'll be some who look at, if it's Lindenwood or the South Side. I think that what's being proposed to us is something that's equitable. Not one community is losing something over the other, but it will give us an opportunity to give our kids their fair share, to ensure that they have a high quality school, that's a safe, secure learning environment, that we have a place that we value our teachers, that where they come to work each and every day, that puts their safety, their health at the utmost front. And most importantly, it's an opportunity for the community to not just talk about a building, but I really challenge our community members to continue to be volunteers, to step up, to be reading buddies, and that to knowing that it really does take a village to ensure that our success for the future and our kids have that in place. And so our scholars need you. And so I just think it's an opportunity for people to step up, not just to talk, but step up and let's get engaged.